Hi everyone, I'm Elvis and I'm about to do a short video for Kubernetes uh, parts and services and deployments. So we're going to start by creating a deployment. How do we do that? Just kubectl create deployment, and the name of the deployment which I want to create is web. I'm going to call it web, and the image which I'm creating it from is one that I created and is up on Docker Hub. Elvis 1 web, and that's all I need to create a deployment. Now the deployment have been created. Within a deployment, we have parts, and to get the deployment itself, first we have to do kubectl get deployment. You should say get deployments, not to confuse you. So that's our deployment. Now, in order for us to know what's inside our deployment, because of course, inside a deployment, we have parts. All we have to do is kubectl get parts. Right? And this part here is inside this deployment. See, web. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to try to expose our deployment so that the world can see it. Right now, if we try to access whatever is inside the deployment, it's impossible, except if we go inside the cluster itself. For now, as a matter of fact, let's go inside the cluster itself. And to go inside the cluster, we have to first get the cluster IP. So all I have to do is kubectl cluster info. Or first I want to describe the pod or the deployment to get the IP address of that pod, right? So kubectl get pod, and I get this pod. I want to describe what's inside this pod, right? So kubectl get pod, this pod here, -o wide. I want to see a lot more information. So this is the IP address of the pod, and we want to be able to curl and see what's inside this pod. So I'm going to try to do it from here and see if it's going to work. Curl 172.172. We'll just copy and paste it. Copy, paste. All right, it's colon 80. So nothing happens. So how do I go about knowing what's inside there? There are two ways of doing it, or three ways of doing it. The first way is to get inside the cluster itself where this container is running in and check from there. The second way of doing it is expose the service, expose the deployment, right? And the third way of doing it is port forward. So I'm going to show you two ways. The first way I want to show you is to go into the cluster itself and curl it from there. So the way I do that is I SSH, or first I get the cluster IP, which is kubectl get kubectl cluster info, and I get the cluster's IP address, right? Copy. I'm not going to clear my screen because I still need this. So SSH, or is it SSH into that IP address, and I know my cluster is Docker, so my username is Docker. So the login as Docker, and the password. So I'm inside the cluster. So what I can do here is curl this IP address and see if I can see what's inside. This is what we need to see. So that's what is in my deployment. That's what I want to see. Okay, so exit. Another way you can SSH into the cluster, right? Right now I'm using Minishift. All you have to do is just get the Minishift IP address, all right? Or if you're using Minishift, all you have to do is just Minishift SSH. Okay, I mean, sorry, if you're using Minikube, not Minishift, Minikube. Minikube SSH. So it's the same thing, right? And you can curl and you see. But I'm going to exit out and show you the second way. The second way is to create a service. So how do you create a service? All you got to do is kubectl create service, right? And I'm trying to create a node port service, okay? Create service, node port service, and the target should be let's just use -h, okay? Use -h and it's going to give us the full syntax. So you see it's very easy. Just copy this, right? And then you can modify it. So I'll copy that and I'll paste it. Then let's modify it. So I'm just gonna call this service web, okay? And the port which I want to use on my host machine is port 8080, and instead the port in the container that I'm pretty sure is running right now is port 80, so that's what I want to use. And as you can see, it created a service for me. Now I can do kubectl get service, kubectl get service. And as you can see, I have the service called web, and it's been created, and this is the port that's been created for. So the way I kind of curl what is inside my deployment is, first of all, I get the cluster IP again. So the cluster IP is supposed to be, in this case, I'm using Minishift. So Minishift IP. Oh, sorry, I'm using Minikube. Why do I keep saying Minishift? Minikube. So Minikube IP, copy. This is your cluster IP. You know, if you do cluster info, that's the same IP address. It's always good for you to use your cluster info command instead of Minikube. Why? Because Minikube is not always the cluster you're going to be using. You could be using a production cluster at work or somewhere else. So don't get in the habit of using Minikube IP. So now what we want to do is curl it through that port. So curl through that port, and you see this is what we need to see. So that's been successfully executed. So the way we just did was we imperatively created resources, okay? but there's a better way of doing it, which is declaratively. This means that we're going to be using Kubernetes API to do it, which in other words, YAML file, which I'm used to. So I'm used to YAML files for creating resources. So first thing we're going to do here is delete the ones that we've already created, right? So kubectl delete. I want to delete everything that I already created. Delete all dash all. So or just delete all dash all. Yeah. So it's going to delete everything that I created, right? You see the part inside my deployment is being created. The replica set inside my deployment is being deleted. Sorry. All the services are being deleted right now. So now let's make sure, let's try to see what we have. kubectl get all. Right, so we have some stuff still running, so I'm going to delete those. kubectl delete all dash all dash all. Yep. Take some time to delete the stuff, so let's just be patient for it to delete everything. Everything is gone, so let's kubectl and get everything. kubectl get all. So looks like I'm pretty clean. This one is the system itself that creates this one, so we're not going to worry about that one, but we know we don't have anything that we created. So now let's do it. Let's create our stuff declaratively, all right, using YAML files. So the way I do that is this command here. First, let's just create like an empty folder. So I'm going to make there kube project, right? So let's see into kube project, because this is where I want to create my files, right? So all I have to do is show you and explain this command to you. So kubectl create deployment, just like we did imperatively, right? And then this is the image that we want to use. We name the deployment web. This is the image that we're creating that deployment from. And now I'm doing a dry run on it. And dash o YAML. I just want you to see what's going to happen. So you see, that command actually shows how the file should look like. You know, it describes whatever you just did. It describes it. It didn't run it. Remember, like when we didn't use the dry run before, we just did this. It actually ran the command for us and created the deployment. But when I use dry run dash o YAML, it's just printing out, you know, statements that have in the API that have been used to create this, but it didn't create it, it just printed it out. Like if I wanted to use a YAML file to create, this is how that YAML file is going to look like, right? So what I'm going to do is run that command again, but I'm going to put it inside a file. So I'm just going to send the output into a file called web deploy, right? Since I'm naming the deployment web, so I want the file to be a deployment for the web, right? Deploy dot YAML. So ls, and we see we have web.yaml. I just want to make sure that we're clear that we don't have any uh, deployments running in the background. So we do a kubectl get deployments, right? Or let's just use get deployments. And you see, no resources, meaning we don't have any resources for, we don't have any deployments running. So now I want to create that JSON file, turn it into a running deployment. And the way to do that is create kubectl create -f, and the name of that file is web deployed or YAML. And as you can see, it says it's created the deployment. So kubectl get deployments. And as you can see, we have deployments, okay? So don't let that confuse you. This is autocomplete. You could still do this same stuff without having that entire command or the entire name deployment.app. So now we know we have our deployments, right? As usual, we want to go test and see what's inside that deployment, right? So we want to describe that deployment first. So kubectl, or not describe it, maybe just get deployments, and the name of our deployment is web, right? Get deployment web dash o wide to see a lot of information. And doesn't look like it gave us some kind of IP address or any of that stuff. And of course, it should not, right? The parts within the deployment should be the ones that have IP addresses and stuff. So now let's get the part. So kubectl get part, get parts. And we see that this is the name of a part that was created inside the deployment called web. So we're just going to copy this and use it. Copy, and we're going to paste that in, and then use the -oy option. And as you can see, we have that IP address to get in the cluster. And the node is minikube. So we're just going to do minikube SSH, minikube minikube SSH. And we're in minikube. So from here we can curl this, copy, paste. We can curl it, paste. And you see, it says this is what we need to see. Exit out of there. And if I try the same thing when I'm not inside the cluster, let's see what's going to happen. Paste. We can't curl it, right? Even if we get the mini shift, or is it minikube IP, kubectl, or just minikube IP is okay for now. Minikube IP. Even if we get this IP right now and we try to curl that stuff, :80, right? Curl, paste. We can't really curl it right now, okay? And the way we can curl this is we need to bore a port. We need to break a port here, right? So we've already chosen 80 and 80 failed. So now let's see how we can break port 80 and use it. Okay, let's just break port 80. I know port 80 is reserved, but let's try to break it in this case. So the first thing we want to do, we also want to create this declaratively. Okay, so we're going to use the command that we used before to create our service, right? Where is it? Where is that command? the one that we used to create the service before. So as you can see, we have created a service for web. Okay, you say kubectl create service node port service, and we named it web. Okay, so we're trying to expose 8080, but like I said, I want to expose 80. Okay, and the port inside the container I'm trying to map it to is port 80. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I want to use the dry run option. Okay, so let's see, how did we do that? As a matter of fact, we did use the -h before just to get the entire thing. You see, they have a dry run option as well. Okay, they have a dry run option. So that's the option we're going to use. Let's take this dry run option here and copy, paste it, and -o YAML. All right, we want to see what it looks like if it was to run as a file. And as you see, not much, but a little goes a long way. So now let's save that in a file. So we'll save that as web service, right? Because the application is called web, and the service for that application, right? The service that helps open the ports so people can come and see your application outside of the cluster. We're calling it web service .yaml. All right. So now let's do that. And now that you have that YAML file called web service, the next thing you have to do is to create it. But first, let's just be sure that we don't have any services running in the background. So we'll do kubectl get services, right? And we have like the internal one. As you can see, it's not called web, right? So we're not worried about it. Now, let's create our own service from the file. So we'll just do kubectl create -f, and the file name is web.svc. So web.svc.yaml, and it says created. So we're gonna attempt to do the stuff that we did before and it didn't work, right? So first, let's do kubectl gets kubectl get svc. We know the what web have been created, and this is the port on top of web. Okay, so we need to get the cluster IP like we did before, and in this case the cluster is minishift or minikube IP. That's the IP address. So all we have to do now is the same thing we tried to do before and it failed, which was curl this. So now we're outside the cluster. We didn't SSH in the cluster anymore. We're trying to stand outside the cluster and do the same thing that we do only when we're in the cluster. Sorry, this is the IP that have been exposed. Copy and paste. And you see, it says this is what we need to see. So we're successfully created a deployment imperatively and expose a port for that deployment using a service, or in other words, expose that deployment to the rest of the world using a service. We did that imperatively, and we've also done the same thing declaratively using files. All right. and we didn't write the files ourselves. We used a trick so that the imperative method write the file for us, and then we just run the create command on those files. So this is the easy way that you get around Kubernetes and its you know tough long imperative commands. So thank you for watching. I'm Elvis G with G Squad IT.